Today we have with us one of our nation's treasures. She is a national treasure. She's an outstanding, notable educator, administrator, performer, conductor. I can go on and on. Anne Marie Hudley. But I want to first preface her coming on by saying that according to the American Psychological Association, music students score much better in math and science and other academic areas than non-musical students. But unfortunately, in public education, we have continued to snip, cut, and take music education and the performing arts way out of place where they should be in place. Because if they are front and center, research also shows us all of the positive behavior and attendance that we get from our students. So I'm not the music educator. However, I am going to bring you in 1 minute a wonderful lady that I want you to listen to. She holds many awards nationally and internationally. She has been elected as the 24th president of the National Association of Negro Musicians. And as I've already said, y'all saw me lick my finger right. I'm turning the page. She's licensed in education as an administrator, supervisor, etc., K through 12. Her main focus has been the development of young people in music education and in the performing arts. She has led our children in concerts in Europe, but she has served in top positions over almost 1,000 teachers and administrators in our nation's largest school district, New York City School District. She has been she also founded the Performing Arts and Technology High School in Brooklyn, and that's where she was a principal. But you can read more about her later. I hope that you do, but this is a national treasure, and I present to you Anne Marie Hudley Simmons. Hello.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so glad to have you today that you took out your busy schedule. We've been trying to get her for a while, but everybody's pulling on this music educator, this change maker. And we're going to just start right in with some questions for her. And we would like for you to tell us what's the correlation between music education, performing arts, and how our students perform in other areas academically, and why is music education important and necessary?
As an educator, I'm always concerned about why music is important to the curriculum, because through music, we believe that every child at every school deserves access to high quality music education. It is part of a well-rounded education. It's essential for students' social, spiritual, and emotional well-being, and a critical tool for establishing equity and access, which many of our children of color, no longer have. I'm not sure if they ever had it, but if they did, they certainly don't have it now. This is supported by all researchers and by federal and state policymakers, but that is the book version. That's a dissertation that we have made, but it's seldom supported in practice. And you only need to hear the testimonies of the thousands of young people, persons even like myself, who were impacted positively by the engagement, the immersion in music education, learning to read through music, and able to complete their education as a result of music. And of course, being connected to every other academia besides music, because music is academic, and many of our law policymakers do not understand that, nor do they provide that for our schools. But I'm one such person. As a child, I think I'm the only one I know who repeated the first grade for 3 years. I was dyslexic. I stuttered. Um, I had all sorts of problems, and I was the second child and of a family of three, and my brother was the genius. But when my mother discovered that I had a gift for music, and that was only because when my brother finished practicing the piano or practicing the violin, I would creep to the piano and try to play what he played by ear. And she discovered this and decided, maybe that's what she needs. But it was when I started studying music in school and privately, I became aware of language. I started reading, I started doing math, I connected the dots. And after becoming, years later, becoming a teacher, I used music to teach all those students who were not achieving in other areas. And what an amazing testimony they all have, that it was music that grounded them, that founded them, that opened up their understanding to everything else. No, music is critical. All of the arts are critical. Music does something for the brain that other arts do not. And all of it is important. But what happens in our schools today is a far cry from what it should be, and it's totally unacceptable.
Share with us some of the other skills that people learn, and especially students when they're young, such as listening skills, cooperating and with other groups, etc. Because I played in a high school band. Tell us some of the other skills that students would not necessarily learn in other academic areas that they can learn by taking orchestra or being in the chorus or just in music education in general.
In my view, one of the major assets that music brings to us is that self-discipline, being cooperative, collaborative, learning as a team, and of course, the other major factor is connecting the dots. Music helps provide learning with math. I mean, I didn't really understand a thing about fractions until I understood time signature. So music helps connect all of those dots. Um, it provides a sense of community. It helps with the child's self-worth and self-development. And of course, it opens up the understanding to all of the other academic subjects. Now, again, I also say as an educator and as administrator, and even as the director of music for the city of New York, um, a lot has to do with the teacher in front of the child. You can have a teacher who may be licensed, but if they're not qualified or interested in teaching the whole child, here again, the child misses the rich experience of having these connections. But not only it trains the right brain, of course, there is no separation between the right and the left brain. The left brain keeps it nice and scientific and methodical, but it's the right brain that keeps it creative and innovative and enjoyable. The listening skills, the appreciation, and all of the above.
And I think you said Italian, that particular language. Um, Tell us how language skills and let's say Italian. But tell us, what does that have to do with music?
There are a lot of terms that we use in music. For example, moderato. We want the children to understand uh, English borrows a lot of its languages, its language from other languages, from German, from um, Italian, even from Spanish. Um, when a child understands moderato, they understand moderate or allegro, which really means happy. They understand why it would be a quick stepping term. Tempo or tempi, they begin to understand how fast or how slow it should be. And you think of retardando or accelerando. When students are able to grasp those words, they connect those to being able to accelerate. How do you accelerate? When you're driving, you press on the accelerator to move the car forward. A retardando, you press on the brake to slow it down. It takes, and of course, particularly with retardando. Back in the day when I was a child, retard meant you were a retarded child and you did not learn very well and you weren't very good. This takes the stigma off that term because now it means that in music we slow down. And they make those connections without even being told that. So retardando, these prestissimo, they're of these words that we have learned, and of course, most of our language in music is in Italian. There there are words that come from the French language and come from German, as I stated before. But most of the Italians were very big on putting all of their interpretation in the Italian language. So we knew da capo, or we knew allegando or largo, all of these terms that students learn, and they seem to remember the language quickly, and then we make the association with the English terminology, and that just sort of speeds their understanding of the English language.
See if I remember some like crescendo and decrescendo.
Yes.
Yes. So absolutely, I mean, the language skills are enhanced, not only the skills, according to Montessori today and the American Psychological Association, but just expanding their vocabulary and opening up the world because there are different types of music. Tell us about the different types of music as a music educator that you have experienced with your students that opened up their world greater than in Chicago, where you're from, and New York, as they studied music and how it was connected to various cultures.
Um, when we were always given a guide. I guess every school district does that. Um, every state has certain mandates of what the student should learn. My thought has always been to start not necessarily where the child is, but take the child where the child should go. And then with backward planning, you include all genres of music. Because I wanted our students, particularly as an African American, uh, I wanted all of our students to know all of the genres of music from the African American experience, from the field hollers, from the blues, jazz, the spirituals, the classical music, because many of our students don't even know that many of our people composed classical music. And then you've got musical theater, you've got opera, all of that. So we wanted our children to understand music from the various areas, what was going on during the Baroque days. And I'd also make a joke about being broke with the Baroque era. um, the Renaissance period, how the classical music became about Impressionism, um, and moving on, the Romantic period, how it ties in with history, making all of those adjustments from period to period to period to period.
Mm-hmm.
And when students see those connections, uh, even if I had them to sing some of those or to bring in pictures or show them some clips, it was very interesting to them. But the interest, and I'll talk about the interest in a minute. Again, the interest drew them into the total, which is why music is so important in our school. It brings in the whole of education. It talks about everything from math to the humanities to history to languages and the like. When I I taught junior high school for about 20 years before I taught high school or college. And my class size was about 118. That was the low end. The highest number of students was 131 students. And because in our day, I'm not sure if this is true in everybody's school district, but we always had to teach 5 periods a day.
Yes.
All right, so I had 3 music classes before lunch and 2 after, and I treated them all like a choir. I wanted to give them music appreciation, but I wanted them to learn music. So I decided this year they were going to learn Brahms from the Requiem, How Lovely is Thy Dwelling Place. And I loved the layers behind the lines and How Lovely is Thy Dwelling Place. It was exciting to me, and I hadn't sung it since high school. And I said, boys and girls, you're going to sing a number that no junior high school in the city has ever sung. Now, I'm not even sure that was true. I believe it was based on the fact that I went to everybody's concert. But the students would sit there and say, we can do that because the word can't, as you know, was never allowed. There was no such word as
Mm-hmm.
can't do this. And I played it for them. And as I was hearing it, having them hear it in the background, I was conducting it in front of their face. And that's something else I taught. I taught conducting to them. And when we started learning it, it was a little bit of a struggle, but a lot of teaching good all kinds of music is what I call brainwashing, making certain students know you can do this. Maybe somebody else can't, but not in this school. You all can do this. And at the end of the year, after they learned a classical piece and they learned something from musical, they learned something that they brought to the table. They learned maybe a light gospel um, and some jazz. At the end of the year, I would say, all right, now that we have completed our concert, what would you like to sing? And this year they said, we want to sing How Lovely is Our Dwelling Place. I said, I thought you all didn't like that. No, we love that song, Miss Hudley. We love that song. Another
Uh-huh.
year, another year it was Mendelssohn's He Watching Over Israel. Another year we did the whole work of Vivaldi's Gloria. And it's amazing how the numbers they thought they would not enjoy, would not like, had not done, don't experience in their own communities, they learn to enjoy and appreciate. Because the fact of the matter is, we want our young people to go on to support these things in the future. We have
Right.
the Philharmonic Orchestra. If you're going to the Philharmonic and you don't see yourself sitting on stage, what is the point of your being in the audience? So one of the things about teaching our kids, and particularly this is what I tell my people in the National Association of Negro Musicians, because we have a competition every year in a different genre. This past year, it was on winds. This coming year, it's going to be on strings. In 2023, we'll be testing them for strings. We want the winners of those scholarship winners to be able to go to New York Philharmonic and say, yes, I hear there is a spot open. I'd like to try for that and get it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Now, since you said that, in the various areas that the students are majoring in, I would say with particular instruments and what they're being exposed to, share with us your experience outside of this country with music education, how other countries treat music education, how their students respond, and etc. What's different about the way the United States appreciates or underappreciates music versus some of the other countries that you visited?
all right, one such country was Germany. I went to Germany. I went to Munich, and I didn't really go there to find out what they were doing with the music education program. I went there for another um, historical reason, but I got a chance to. I was invited by a family to have dinner with them. So before they had dinner, all the young people lined up around the piano, and they started singing in four-part harmony. And I'm concerned. How did you learn to sing in four-part harmony? What was your experience like? And they said, "Oh, well, we all learned solfeggio." And of course, there was another language that they explained to me. So we always had to sing all of the songs. Some of them were chorales, Bach chorales, and we had to sing them according to the notes in solfeggio. So naturally, when we came out of it, we were able to sing anything in four-part or two-part or whatever harmony. And they said, and we love the spirituals. We found the spirituals most interesting. So they were singing some Hall Johnson's arrangements of spirituals, some Nathaniel Dett arrangements of spirituals, and some Burley, Harry Burley arrangements. And I found it interesting that their schools demanded that they know how to read the notes in visual by singing them by notes. I went to um, I went to Ghana, and I went to a church there. It was the church was Calvary Baptist Church. Now my church in Jamaica, New York, is Calvary Baptist Church, and I think that's why I chose that church. And here was this choir of young people, I guess between the ages of 18 and maybe 30, and they were singing all the hymns in four-part harmony. And I found that interesting as well. But I went to one of their schools and I observed how they had a period during the day when students' dedication was to, and there was no piano in the room, didn't see musical instruments, but they had notes on the board in front of them and they were reading those notes and studying those notes. I tell you, I sat there mesmerized. I said, I wish this was demanded of our students. And
Mhm.
most of those students, of course, went on to college. Many of them left their country to go to college, but that was an exciting time just hearing that. And then, of course, the same thing happened when I went to Spain, um, observing that it was not necessarily a programmed thing. It was just something that was essential for their education. They had to have this experience. Now, in Spain, many of them learned music by playing the guitar. They all had to learn how to read music for the guitar. But in this country, there was a time, and I think I'll be politically correct when I say this. There was a time when music was considered essential and was supported by the school board, by the borough presidents, by the administrators, and of course by the chancellor and his team. In New York, our superintendents they're called chancellors. All of the various districts have superintendents. And I noticed that when I became the director of music for the city of New York, the demographics were changing. When I came to New York, it was 60% others and 40% children of color. As time moved on, it became 60% children of color, and 40% other. It's less than that now. And as the demographics change, so did the requirements. No longer were they interested in teaching children music. Those instruments were expensive. They weren't interested in paying that much money for musical instruments. They weren't interested even in the concerts that we did. And the concert that my school did had to be performed in Queens College in Colden Auditorium because our high school our high school stage was not large enough. And I finally said to them at board meeting, I said, why is it when children of color enter this school district, you decide that they no longer need what is culturally theirs? I said, we are musical by nature. And if you build on that, you build a child. As Frederick Douglass says, it costs less money to teach young minds than to pay for them being imprisoned. It was interesting to me how that's always been a factor, and that's what I've been fighting for the last 20 years, getting
Mhm.
them to understand, give them what they can do well, monopolize on that, and they'll be able to. Because you know what happened, Ms. Turner? They decided that our kids needed more reading and more math. My school district was called 29, and there were two principals in my school district. One was black and one was white. And they were told that all five schools, junior high schools, were told, cut your music program because we don't have money to fund it.
Mhm.
These two school district principals said, no, we are not cutting that. That's our signature. We're not cutting that. No, you need to give them more math and more English and more reading, less music. Of the five schools, the students who fared better in math and in the reading scores, because those were tests that they were given every April, junior high school 231 and junior high school 59 scored the highest. The others that took out the music but had more math and more reading, their grades went down. And I said, proof positive. You did
Yes.
not prove your case. Here we gave our kids all the music in the world. We made certain that they performed. We took them to Carnegie Hall. We scored higher. Why do you not understand that if you have a success, why are you breaking that?
I'm going to read something right here from American the Psychological Association, and I'm just going to quote: often resources for music education, including the hiring of trained specialized music teachers, band, and orchestral instruments, are cut or not available in elementary and secondary schools. The argument has frequently been that we need all of our money to focus on math, science, English. The irony is that music education, multiple years of high quality instrumental learning, and playing in a band or orchestra, or singing in a choir at an advanced level may be the very thing that improves all around academic achievement and an ideal way to have students learn more holistically in schools. And then, as I was looking at Montessori today, they went on with their research to say that attendance of students and the behavior of students improve as they take pride and glory as something that they love, music education and the performing arts. So why do you think that our school districts have been led to focus on other academic areas other than the performing arts?
Well, that's a question that's very political. I don't see, from my experience, just from my experience, others are very comfortable with our young people not doing well, which is why even when they teach them reading and math, they don't do a good job of that either. They don't mind that we are not at first chair in the orchestra or at anybody's chair in the orchestra or in the band. They were very happy that we were not, we had to form our own operas with Tremonisha and Porgy and Bess. That's all we can do when we can do everything. We can do Verdi, we can do all of the operas very well. They're very comfortable leaving us out of the table um, um, and out of the room altogether. It's going to take a whole lot to turn that around, because we know that music it improves recall and retention of the verbal information. We know that it does that because music is repetitive and it has patterns. We know that it boosts reading, as you just mentioned. It boosts the reading and English language arts. All of that. It increases even their scores when they're getting ready to do their SATs or an exam to enter a college. Those who have been immersed in music have a leg up every time. So my question, it begs the question: why would you not want us to achieve? When we achieve, that improves the atmosphere for everybody. And what you teach our young people, uh, for example, all right, New York City. It's hard to find a school in New York City where they have the arts. Period. And there are a couple of groups who are fighting to get it back, and I'm in the mix with those groups who are fighting to get that back. But on the island where I live, if you shut down their music program, they would have the superintendent of schools and that principal in there. They would keep them from coming out of that door until they restored the music program.
Mhm.
So there's a thing that there are various ways we have to look at this. Some of our parents are not aware because they've been taught this for so long, or they've been told this for so many years, that no, music is a fluff. It's extra. It's an appendage. It's not necessary to the curriculum. Um, what your child needs to do is read. So they teach them enough to read and do math to get a job at McDonald's. Now that may be a viable way of earning some kind of a living, but there's more for us. Because let's say, for example, all right, so a child's not going to be first chair in an orchestra or a band. Maybe they won't sing opera, but there's so many other jobs in music, lucrative jobs, from being a music producer, from being a sound person, artist manager, a tour manager, a booking agent, a music publicist. Let's teach our children, young people, to conduct.
Writing scores for all of those movies that we like to watch.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. There are at least, I think the last time I counted, about 42 music jobs that if we prepare them for that. There's electronic music, um, entertainment lawyer. They're just so many. Of course, they can become teachers. Can become performers, but we are locking our children out of something they can do very well, and they can excel in every other aspect of their lives if they're given an immersion. Not someone said we want to expose them to me. I said no, exposure that's for pneumonia. Let's immerse them in music so that they can be engaged and become the enriched young people that they can be. These young scholars can do anything, I must tell you. I'll give you one last anecdote. I most recently was called in to take over a job as on I'm not retired. I'll put it to you this way. Neither my mom and dad believed in retirement. So here I come along, and I guess I'm of the same mindset. There's no such thing as retirement. But
Mhm.
but I was getting ready to finish up my dissertation, and I was called in by a young man, a new principal of the Elmont School District. That's might be 93% children of color, and many of them come from Nigeria, some are from Haiti, many that are from the South. Um, but they're just wonderful, wonderful children. And it was interesting how the principal, who was new to the school, said, "Now I want our kids to be able to pass all the entrance exams and to get scholarships." Since he's been there, and the music program there is rich. I mean, our musicals, our concerts, it's been incredible. And one of our young ladies was the winner of the Jimmy Award, the National Jimmy Award, and her name is Ekele Ukegbu. If anyone ever wants to see a young lady who came out of a school district where music was considered important, you want to Google Ekele Ukegbu. She is just marvelous. And she sings everything. She does opera, musical theater. She loves gospel music. An incredible young lady. But my point is that at least 25% of those students went to college on scholarship, uh, with everything paid. They went to Cornell, they went to Yale. We have a young man, Devin Johnson, who went to the University of Chicago because, and all of those students, all of them, all 25% of them were immersed in music. when you have these kind of, it's not an anecdotal record, it's a research, it's something that we can say this is, and that continues to be a part of my research, proving that music should be included in all of our schools. And the reasons why. I just believe that when we finally get in this country the notion that when a young Black child, a Black young man, a Black young student, all of our scholars of color, and not to say that the others will benefit, because many times in other nationalities, ethnic groups, those parents will ensure if they don't get it in school, they're going to make certain their child gets private lessons. But what you do for our young people will make it better for the entire country. There should be nothing like children shooting kids and falling and dropping out of school. Give them the rights that they deserve. That we shouldn't have to fight for these rights. These should be inalienable rights. They deserve to have a full holistic education to make them a full individual.
Mhm. And not be crippled by any industry, be it the testing industry, the textbook industry, the university system. That we have great universities, but so many of our schools have just become paper mills in order to make green paper.
Right,
Uh,
right,
and
right.
we are so undereducating our society as a whole and our young people. The majority of us will not be able to get a special tutor or private education or travel, etc. So
Right.
therefore, our schools definitely open up the doors and can continue to open up the doors, but all of those doors need to be open.
Absolutely.
What? Tell us, what could we do as Jobo Blow Public, Miss
Mm,
Next Door, in order to impress upon our school districts and our states, the powers,
right.
that there is an urgency, a real need and urgency for the performing arts, and I'm just going to add, and the visual arts.
Yes, absolutely. Um, I wanted to add one thing. My mother was a teacher, and uh, one of I thought I was going to be a doctor, but my grandmother was a teacher of a one-room school, and my mother was a teacher in Chicago in a school that was supposedly area where children were not educable. But then we had the grades were rated A, B, and C. If you were in an A group, that meant you were highly intelligent. If you were in a B group, you were considered you'll make it. If you were in a C group, heaven help you. And when my mother got to the school and she was told that she would have a C group that year, and when the end of the, and she didn't even know what this was, not fully aware of what they meant by C group, but she was just determined that they were going to learn, and they did, and they scored as high as the A group. So the next year they said, well, you get B group this year. She said, no, I want to keep with the C group. I love the C group. She taught the C group for 7 years, and by the time that uh, 6 years, I'm sorry, by the time that I was to either go into the medical field or in education, mothers back in those days told you what you were going to do. She said, no, you're going to be a teacher, and I want you to come to my school and watch. And I watched my mother teach music in three different ways. And we talk about ostinato patterns. Here, these so-called uneducated children were understanding the word ostinato and understanding how to do a bass line, and the same thing she did with time signature, and how they would move would jump and hold place for a whole note, jump twice for a half note. It was amazing what she was doing with these young people. And then I watched her do math. I spent the whole it was back in the day, it was called Take Your Child to Work Day. I think they still have that.
Yes, yes.
And
Uh-huh.
I watched her. She had cupcakes, and she had lollipops, and all there was a cake on one side, trying the whole of something, and comparing the cake to a whole note, comparing it to a whole figure in math, cutting that cake in half so kids could see, here's a half and here's a half, these two halves make a whole, this is a half note. It was incredible. She said, when you start teaching, make certain you teach your child the same thing 7 different ways, because children don't all learn the same way. So
That's right.
We're going to use another method. Some children do it by seeing, some children do it by hearing, some children do it by speaking, some by fingering it, but use a variety. Even when you do a sentence and you
Mhm.
tell the boys and girls, crescendo means to gradually get louder, but you also want to say crescendo means to gradually get louder. And then you might want to say crescendo, you know, and I'm watching all of this, and I'm saying this was long before Gardner talked about the multiple intelligences and how the children learn in different ways. And
Mhm.
this is what I learned from her. Now, one thing she did, and this leads me to your question. On parent teacher night, she told the students, your passing grade, even though you've done very well in the class, but if you really want to get a passing grade, make certain your parent is here for student teacher night. You're going to be here as well, but
Oh,
the
oh,
parents have to be.
yes.
So I was sitting at her desk because I was going to help maneuver things and pass. Like mom had a program for each parent as they came in, and they all stood in the back, and all the children were sitting in the front with their hands folded in front of them with a little tablet. It was like an umbrella, and it said, "I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a hairdresser." Whatever they had decided they were going to be, they had printed it out. By the way, the grade was grade 3. The grade was grade 3. That's the
Ah,
grade at which they say children drop out before they get to grade
uh-huh.
grade 3 and grade 7 are very critical grades. So
Yes.
the parents stood in the back, and she asked the first child, "So when do you get to watch television?" Never during the week. I can only watch television on Saturday or Sunday. So she asked the parents, "Are there any parents who disagree with that?" And they said, "No, we don't. We used to have our child look at television in the evening for fun, but my child told me that you said no television until
That's
Saturday or Sunday." And they all, it was amazing. Some 30 years after that, we ran into a student when I went back to Chicago, and I was walking down the street with my mother, and they said, "Miss Hudley," and this person must have been now 35 or maybe going on 40. They remembered my mother from the third grade, and they were
mm,
so happy to report, "I'm a banker at this particular. I remember you. It was because of you. I did X, Y, and Z." But who was the their support team were the parents. So
uh-huh.
when we talk about how do we get this back in, there are a million ways we can do it, but we really have to look at all the stakeholders. And I always say we start with the parents. It was when I started being invited to parent teacher meetings. And in some cases, it was only a parent association. There wasn't a PTA. It was just a PA. And I would give them my story, how that when I was in first grade, here's what mother did when she realized there's never been a dumb Hutley in our lives. Let us find out why Anne Marie is still now. Aside from being dyslexic, I also couldn't see. But even
Yeah.
when they got me glasses back in the day, they didn't understand that the eye and it's a neurological problem,
Mhm.
dyslexia. But there are exercises they give our young people now that they didn't have available to us in my day. But I started with the parents, and then I went from the parents to the teachers of music, and I wanted to see how they were teaching music. From the teachers, I went to the assistant principals who were in charge of music, because many assistant when I became an AP, I was in charge of foreign language, music, and history, I believe.
Mhm.
So I spoke to those APs who were in charge of music. Then I asked, I need to see all the principals of this school district, and there were always five el- um, junior junior high school or IS schools, intermediate schools. And then we would ask all of the elementary school principals to come and meet, and we would talk about music. And then, of course, you have to hit the person at the top, and that was the chancellor. Now, that's what happens in New York City. But I think the discussion we have to rally community support, the political activists, those who are making laws. But for our parents, if they start knocking on the door, if they understand that there's a door to knock on and why that door should be open to them, then we can move forward. But until we educate our parents, and many of them are educated, don't get me wrong, there are some who know and would love to have somebody come and support them. but most of our parents do not understand the importance of music. They would rather have their children sit in school all day long and then go to an after school remedial program in math or reading and not make any progress. And they'll take them out of the band to do that while their grades plummet. So we do have to have that voice, a strong parental organization that understands and will knock at that door. Um, but so we're talking about the parents, we're talking about principals, administrators, political activists. I even engaged, um, um, what we talk about, okay, Baptist, so I'll talk, I engaged pastors. I said,
Yeah.
what are you all doing in church that supports music? All of these have to be invited to the table, and
Mm.
it has to be repeated, 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 because for so long in New York we've lost almost 25 to 30 years of students not having a viable music program. So that's a
And and in speaking of New York, I was fortunate enough to go to about four of your schools of performing arts. I remember one in Brooklyn, and I'm trying to think of one where there were mothers. These kids were bussed in because they wanted to be, where they would catch buses, and I think they would have passes where they could uh, come to school on after school even, and augment their education with music and etc. I was just so impressed because otherwise these young women may have dropped out of school. And I was just pure jealous, and I'm still jealous of LaGuardia.
Laura
I'm
has
just jealous. I'm
arts.
jealous of that school. I would just tell everybody. But in various places in New York where the teachers are treated as professionals, we can still improve now. We can
Oh
still improve. But Georgia has a long way to go.
yeah. Mhm.
And the teachers are the ones that who are in charge of not only each other, but their department.
Right.
And they are you all are writing out the prescriptions for what you need, and you have cooperative teaching in most parts. I mean, I was just so darn jealous because I knew it could work. But when I walked through LaGuardia, I had a vested interest there because one of my relatives worked there.
Right.
I asked, when do the bells ring for class changing? And one person said, you haven't heard the bells, Miss Turner? No, I did, because they melodious chimes and
Right.
I mean, the cordwood floor I was on,
Right.
and when I went downstairs and saw young people in chamber music, and they were putting now doing it all themselves and helping
Right.
each other along, and then I saw the orchestra and I saw dancers and singers, and oh my God. And this was a public school. And then I went to some of the other schools and I saw and talked to principals as to students whose lives would have been lost had
Yes.
it not been for those schools of performing art.
Absolutely.
And I want to make all schools now school of performing arts. And everything else should be the ancillary area. This is just me.
Right.
Um, I want to ask you one or two more things. Could you tell us some of your notable students in the past that you had? And um, because when I was there at LaGuardia, I was just so shocked to know that one of the major actors in The Lion King had come had come through a school of performing arts, and they were making costumes there at the school. They were actually taking the instruments themselves and revamping the instruments. They were writing music. They were putting on shows. I could just go on and on and on. But tell us about some of your students, and then I'll get to the closing.
Okay. Well, may I preface that with something else about the New York City environment?
Yes,
Um, we do have maybe three or four strong music schools. What is painful to me is that the majority of our students do not have that experience.
that's right.
So it's still like the elitist, schools, and
Yep.
we really want everyone to have that
Hmm.
experience.
Because I
Um,
think it's an entrance test or some type of test that you have to take to get into some
you
of
have to
those
get
schools.
right, right. And if
Huh?
your school doesn't have that kind of training, then you don't you know you're not going to get in. Um,
Right.
I do know that some of one of my former students worked with a child to get her into to one of the schools, not into LaGuardia. But back in the day, most of my students who applied for the LaGuardia School of the Arts got in. But looking at some of my former students, for example, you've got Marjorie Martina Lard, who tried out for the Tap Dance Kid, along with Alfonso Ribeiro, who now has his own game show. And she won the nomination award, Emmy Award for that show. And she not only worked with the Tap Dance Kid for a few years, she was with a traveling group and even traveled with Ken Harney, who is one of the most outstanding directors of musicals that we have on the planet. And then, of course, she did other things. She did some television. She did Common Ground. An exceptional young woman. She went and do bit pieces in Ain't Misbehaving, um, and other musicals. Then you had Felicia Elamine, she was Felicia Mack at that time, who went to that school, LaGuardia School of the Arts, and she was in Fame. When Fame came out, she was one of those in that production. She went on to become an opera singer in the Grand Opera and was an outstanding diva with a voice that, I mean, she could hit these C's above high C without any effort. And everybody thought she was just to catch me out. And then her body opened up into lupus, which cut her career short. You've got Julius Williams, who became a conductor, and he is still conducting today. One of the students, speaking of The Lion King, um, Nick Ash, was the first young fellow in actor in The Lion King. He is now on Queen Sugar that you'll see on television. Now he's grown a beard. He's an amazing artist. He directed the Choir Boys on most recently before he went back into their next sequel for Queen Sugar. There are quite a few, and of course, those who didn't make it to the big time. I am so appreciative of the young people that I took to do a European tour. I was also the director of the All City High School Choir, and these were students who came from the five boroughs, and they would rehearse in Manhattan every Saturday from the first week in October to the last week in May. And I said, they're locked into New York City. I need to take them to Europe. I need them to see something else. I had made some friends in Barcelona, Spain. So I took these young people on their first trip to Barcelona, Spain. Um, Mayor Dinkins was on board at that time, and we were short about $62,000 to take 108 people to Barcelona. And we happened to meet up with him when he was doing one of his campaigns, and he invited us into his office. And I told him why I was doing what I was doing. I said, these young people have never had this experience. And I really want them to grow, and they need to see the outside world so they can see what's available to them.
Mhm.
Well, he said, oh, okay. So he called. He said, get so and so in the line. Tell him I need $10,000. Get so and so in line. He raised over $62,000 for us in that room in less than an hour.
Mm.
And our kids were able to go to Barcelona and sing at the Familia Sagrada, this huge and marvelous cathedral. Um, they sang in so many arenas, and we took them on tour so they could see. It was amazing. It was an artistic experience for them.
Wow.
And they said, Miss Huppy, I would have never been out. I have never been out of Brooklyn until I came to New York to
Mm.
rehearse on Saturdays. And now I'm out of my country. I'm in Spain. The next year we went to the Prague because I wanted them to go to Brussels. We went to areas where Bach was the musical director, and it was just amazing. For 3 years in concession, we took them to Spain, and one of my very good friends who graduated with me from Roosevelt University, Patricia Pates Eden, who unfortunately is not with us today. She just passed away about 3 weeks ago. She was my assistant conductor. And I I had to ask her, I said, okay, this third year, I need you to take them to Spain. And it was amazing. But out of that, one of the young men, Jemani Williams, became the New York Public Advocate in New York. He's next in line for the mayor. He says that's a position he never wants to have, but he's the public advocate for New Yorkers. And he often talks about his experience in Spain and how to open up his understanding to other people, other arts, other flavors, not just the Bavarian treatment that we got maybe when we were in Germany or what we got when we were in Brussels, but paella, which they had never had until they went to Spain. They wanted sangria, and I said, no, I don't think we're going to do sangria. I said, it's a delicious drink, but I got other
Yeah.
mothers, children here that you will not have on this trip. When you're old enough, you come back, you'll have that on your own. But
Uh-huh.
it's these kinds of experiences that I think are just so exciting for me. When I look back over and look at all the young people who've passed through either my class or they've passed through something that we have created for them to do and seeing their success. But they're all comrades. They're not all advocates. And they don't mind buying a ticket to the opera or to a concert or to a musical.
That's right. That's right. As you were talking, I was thinking about the research that shows us and tells us about 49 to 51% of what children retain, it is from outside of the classroom, those other experiences. And certainly as a teacher who loves, and I think you should love what you do because you're great at it when you love what you do.
Absolutely.
You're one of those national treasures who loves what you do with young people, and you have to have the support because sometimes it gets real hard.
Yes, it does.
It shows. I mean, the dividends just keep on piling up and paying if the teachers are allowed to do and say and give the recommendations to the powers that be as to what we need. And music education is certainly one. Certainly, and it should be central. It should not just be something on the sidelines. Before you wrap up with your last statement, I just want to read something here. I've been looking at it for a few days, and this is November 19th, 2015, from First Lady Michelle Obama. But since then, she has continued to crusade for the arts. And I will quote her. As I've said many times before, art education is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It's really the air many of these kids breathe. It's how we get kids excited about getting up and going to school in the morning. It's how we get them to take ownership of their future. And most importantly, it's how we get them to go to college. And I want to just add something to that, and this would be well-rounded, good citizens.
Absolutely.
Give us your closing statements. I can't thank you enough for today.
Oh no, this is my heart. Has been my life's work, and it will always be that. And it's definitely the part of my dissertation. So the question becomes, why the urgency for the arts? Why the urgency for music? And
Mhm.
who is locking us out of the room? And the last part of that question would be, is it us? Because if we're not informed about what we need, then how can we ask for it? Um, that is so, because we know that the arts are academic. We know that the arts allow students to develop important cognitive potentials that are often overlooked in the curriculum. We know that the arts open understanding and learning for all students, and the underserved population will greatly profit from the arts, provided it's given to them by certified, qualified, licensed instructors with appropriate equipment, with appropriate and ample supplies and artistic text. The arts provide an opportunity for all students to compete on the global market with full and equal access to all of these experiences. And that's what I'm fighting for.
Yes, and that's what we are all going to continue to fight for. We're going to escalate it and ramp it on up. So I want to thank you so much for your time today. I want to call you doctor, and
Thank
because you
you.
are a doctor, you really are. So we want to applaud you and just give you all of the praises that you deserve. And I want to again tell the audience, please share this video with everyone. It is so important. And again, we want to thank Anne Marie Hudley Simmons, one of our nation's treasures uh, in education, period,
Yes.
and especially in music education.
May
Thank you.
May I add
Yes,
one more
ma'am.
thing before we
Go ahead.
close?
Yes.
You mentioned that I'm the president of the National Association of Negro Musicians, an organization that was incorporated and chartered in 1919. We have a goal, we have a mission statement for music education. And I would encourage anyone to go online, Google us under nanm.org, for that which stand the initials for the National Association of Negro Musicians, because what we do and provide for young people, most other musical organizations do not. We mentor, we tutor, we prepare venues, we provide scholarships locally, regionally, and of course nationally. Our national competition that comes up in Dallas in 2023, the top prize is only $5,500. My goal is that the top prize become 25,000. So we're getting there. But I would love to have our listeners to get involved with the National Association of Negro Musicians and see what it is we do, because there may be something that those who are watching and listening can even add and learn from and help us grow as well. That's very important to me.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you for sharing that. And we will also share it with more people, as many as possible. That is a very worthy organization. I'm glad you mentioned the work that you all are doing, the very fine work.
thank you so much.
Thank you again. And with that, thank you for listening.